Welcome to Write Volumes. Behind the Volume presents Shades of Writers video interview #1. Yay. My name is Janaea. I'm one of the editors and founders of Write Volumes. Our goal is to give diverse voices an outlet for expression and to bring attention to diverse writers and our thoughts. We are releasing a monthly newsletter where we will feature interviews of our wonderful writers to help people like you get to know them better. And now we will also be doing video interviews as well as we delve deeper into some topics that are conveyed over video much better than just the written word. Our first video interview conversation is with Karen Brailsford. Karen Brailsford is one of the Write Volumes authors. She majored in English literature at Yale and is a licensed spiritual counselor through the Agape University of Transformational Studies and Leadership. Welcome, Karen. I wanted to discuss, hold on while I stop sharing the screen. I wanted to discuss your pieces in the Write Volume anthologies because they are amazing. And I really think it could be a benefit to others, especially during this time. The topics you covered in your pieces could be relevant to a number of different people now. They certainly transformed me. First, I want to thank you for being a part of our debut anthologies for Write Volumes. You submitted pieces for both the horror anthology, Shades of Horror and Strangeness, and the transitions anthology, Shades of Transitions and Transformation. The horror piece, Shades of Love, had such distinctive characters and situations. But the piece I wanted to speak about first is the transitions piece. You wrote both a poem, Harriet and Me, and the story, Mommy Still. But Mommy Still isn't just a story. It's a nonfiction look at the death of your mother, Leona. The first time I read it, it made me pause. It was so personal and moving. What motivated you to write this piece?
Thank you for having me here, Janae. I'm really honored to be the first one, so thank you so much. I wanted to write this piece because I wanted to breathe new life into my mom, so to speak, and there's so many people who loved her and continue to love her. It was actually astonishing for me to hear from cousins who said to me, she made me feel so special. She loved me the best. Like every cousin said that just about. So she was this larger than life figure. And also I wanted to do more healing. You know, the healing, the grief has ebbed and flowed over the years. And it's been, let's say 23 years as of tomorrow, June 21st, since she made her transition. So I wanted to continue to do that healing of the grief.
Okay. I think that also kind of answered my next question about why was it important to write about this transition. So how did this transform you?
I think I've been transformed over the years, you know, probably usually around this time of the year. But writing this piece transformed me because I revealed a secret in the story. And it was something that I had held on to that I never shared. It's my mother's secret. And so it transformed me because I had to really dig deep and decide how vulnerable did I want to be? How authentic did I want to be? Was it my secret to share? And so I've been told that it's easier to write about people once they've transitioned, once they've passed, and you're free to write about it, but I didn't feel that way going into this. And so I had a nervous pit, you know, in the bottom of my stomach after I submitted the piece to you, wondering, should I take it back? Can I say this? And then this wondrous thing happened. I feel like I got signs from my mother that it was okay to share what I share in the story. So I'm being a little mysterious here, for people to read the story.
Right.
And also I did consult with my sacred circle of spiritual friends, this group that I'm a part of. And one of the members whom I really honor and revere, she said, sometimes, secrets are just meant to be revealed. Maybe it's time to let go of that. Maybe that would even help your mother. And I had this feeling or a sense that part of her transition had to do with holding on to this secret, that the cancer that ate her up inside may have actually been that secret eating her up inside. So it was hard, not so much to write about this, but it was hard to let it go and to hand it over and to think, oh my gosh, what have I done? In the end, I decided that it was a good thing, that this is what she wanted, and I'm just happy that I was able to participate in that deliverance of sorts.
Yeah, because when I read your piece, and it is so brave to write nonfiction, just really courageous. I use personal experiences in my writing, but nonfiction is like taking it to a whole new level. Why did you choose to make it nonfiction versus fictionalizing it?
It would have felt inauthentic to me to fictionalize it because it was such a powerful, true story. I remember at one point, I think you said, oh, you can fictionalize it. And I remember thinking, how could I do that? It was like, I couldn't even really, I'm like, no, this is what really happened. I think it would have taken me outside of the story and created some sort of a barrier in my being authentic and honest in writing it. And that would have been sense, I think, by the reader had I fictionalized it. That was my sense. I didn't, either I was going to write it as nonfiction or not write it at all.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So the timing of this writing is exceptional with COVID and like pre-COVID and pre-quarantine, right before a time of so much death in such a short period of time. What made you decide to write the piece this year or release the piece this year?
I think I was a willing co-conspirator. I think the universe conspired to have this happen, the timing. I mean, here we are sitting on the eve of my mother's transition. Oh, I just realized something as well, that it was, feeling a little emotional, that it was a Saturday night, actually.
Oh,
Not
wow.
only was it the 20th, so she transitioned, she died, it was a Saturday night, and then it was going into midnight. So it was actually, when I looked at the clock, it was June 21st. So it was right at the summer solstice. So anyway, I just realized that. So feeling, we've talked about doing this interview, and I only realized just now it was actually a Saturday night. So your question again was why the synchronicity of the timing, I guess. I guess I wrote the piece last year, although now that I think about it, bits and pieces of it I had written in my journal, for instance, so I had that resource to look at. Yes, this is a time of deep transformation. I mean, that's another synchronicity, that the volume itself is about transitions and transformations. So I think you're playing a role, and the folks behind Right Volumes are playing a role as well. It felt that it was time. I know at one point, several years ago, I realized that around this time of year, I would become very sad and depressed. I really wouldn't consciously know why. It'd be the period from now till her birthday, which is July 17th, and then continuing on in the summer. So I feel like I've done a lot of healing around her death, and it just felt that now was the time to bring this story forward.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like a lot of things you do are kind of connecting in a bigger way, in a bigger picture to life in general. Did you have any specific hope for the reader to come away with anything after reading Mommy's?
Mm, I wanted the reader to come away inspired. The interesting thing about my mother's death, and then my dad died about 18 months later. And it seems really strange, but I remember feeling a sense of liberation, a sense of freedom in the grief, um, in that I could do anything. I could be anything. I could create anything, because if I could survive her death in particular, I could survive anything. It made it feel, it seemed to me that there's a sense of hope, a sense of, again, liberation, that I could do anything. Because, hey, if I could make it through this, like the idea that I could be on the planet, my mother not be on the planet. At that point, I married a year later and had my daughter. So the late 90s were very, very fertile, transformational time for me. So, and I think it's not a coincidence that it happened so like 97, 98, 99 in terms of my mother's death, and then marriage and a kid, and then my father's death. So they bookended. And that's the first time I've ever really thought about that their deaths bookended this period of this literal fertile thing happening within me, and in my life. So I don't think that's a coincidence. I think when one experiences the death of a parent, well, I'll speak for myself in that it was a way for me to move through life and see and experience like the depths of it in such a powerful way, in such a really powerful way. Doesn't mean that I didn't grieve. Doesn't mean that, sometimes even now I tear up or cry about it. I find that grief ebbs and flows. And right now I'm in a period of, wow, that really happened. I've committed it to paper. And so that feels really healing for me right now.
I know we talked a little bit about this outside of this interview, but your piece, I had a transition this year too,
Mm-hmm.
and like your piece really helped me to get through this. In April, my mom transitioned, and it was unexpected, and I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to do. And what kept going through my mind is, this can't be happening. And then Mommy still. And I know we kept fighting and trying to like do everything for my mom. She was in the hospital, and we kept trying to help her not to give up, not just to keep fighting. And we were talking to the doctors and everything. And then, of course, with COVID, I wasn't allowed into the hospital anymore, and everything was being done over the phone. And I kept going back to your piece, and pieces of it just kept floating in my mind. And I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't read your piece like 27 times for it to really stick in my head. And the turning point for you in the story, sorry, spoiler alert, is when you let your mom go and you told her she could go home. And I kept thinking, am I gonna have to reach that point with my mom too? Sorry. And your acceptance of that moment, that acceptance helped me to recognize that the acceptance was not a surrender. It was actually a circle or in the story you say, a healing, not a cure. And at that point, I actually did tell my mom. I was like, I really want you to stay, but if you have to go, it's okay. And I don't think I could have reached that without reading your piece. Sorry. Um, so thank you. Like, I don't know what I would have done this time without your story. So, um, I just hope it could also help other people. Like right now, in the time of COVID, well, death is, it's so personal, and normally we share it with other people, but we've now become more isolated and solitary because we can't congregate, we can't like have large funerals. But even reading pieces or just talking to people over the phone can still help. And I don't know, it's just really powerful for me. And again, like, thank you so much for creating this. And I know it was hard for you, but
You're so welcome. And I want to honor you, Janaea, for sharing what you shared just now, because I know it's really recent for you, and it's got to be really raw for you. So thank you. And I do want to say my mother's name is Leola, and your mother's name is
Leah.
Leah, I know. So I just wanted to just breathe their names into the atmosphere. And this, again, another synchronicity. And thank you so much for dedicating the volume to this, to the two of them, and to all others. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
We had a moment.
I know, it's like, okay, so let's transition.
Let's transition.
So you not only wrote about you and your mom for transition, you continued the trend of writing about strong Black women in your poem, Harriet and Me. What was the genesis of this piece? Why Harriet Tubman?
Harriet's always been my hero. And so I remember you commented that, gosh, did you write this piece before the movie was coming out? And I did. You know, that she was just in the consciousness, in the atmosphere, in the zeitgeist. So so I think we'll probably be seeing lots of Harriet, because I mean, who better now to embody what's happening in our world, you know, this very day, you know, this very day, literally. This is also, okay, so we have what, summer solstice, we have my mother's transition, we have Father's Day tomorrow, but we also have this rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma happening. So,
Yeah.
you know, led by he who should not be named. Anyway, so interesting confluence of time. So yeah, Harriet came through. I didn't know I was going to write about Harriet, but she's just amazing. And I guess in the title, I talk about her birth name, Araminta Ross. And there's something about her taking on this new name and taking on this warrior presence and role in the lives of those that she led to freedom then, and then continues to lead to freedom now. I mean, there's something really wonderfully empowering about that. And so I feel that Harriet's my ancestor. You know, she's our ancestor, and so I just feel empowered just saying her name, Harriet. You say Harriet, you know who you're talking about, right? She's one name, the one name phenomenon.
And it's funny because I was looking up more stuff about her. Harriet was her mother's name. And so, like, she changed her name from Araminta to Harriet. And I don't know, I just thought that was a nice circle. We're talking about
To continue to honor the mothers. Yes, yes, yes. And also, I love the fact that this came across in the movie, but I don't remember knowing this or learning this as a kid, for instance. She really was a mystic.
Oh,
She had dreams and visions after having what was it? Did she, I think from having been beaten, I don't want to misspeak if I remember the story, but she had visions and dreams and God was speaking to her. So I love that aspect given my being a spiritual therapist. So I just love, I love that aspect. And I love mystics. So
yeah. Um, I love the lines in your poem. Don't be fooled by my feistiness and my fury. I rage on so that I can create a future. And I do feel like that's so appropriate in this time. Like just ideas, not like I continue on. It's I rage on. It's like so
mhm.
active, it's so powerful. Um, yeah, I think about that a lot too.
Yeah.
So how relevant do you feel discussing Harriet in this current time is?
Well, we are raging on, right? We're raging on. We see that we're raging on. And now finally it seems that that how should I put this? I guess we've been raging on and we've not always been heard. And finally it feels that we are being heard.
Yes.
I read something really empowering yesterday by a fellow spiritual therapist, and she posted this, um, for lack of a better word, I guess, like manifesto, personal mission statement. And she talked about how she realizes that she used to shrink a little bit. She's African American. Actually, she's African born. That she would shrink. She realized the number of ways that she would shrink. Um, when she, for instance, if she got into an elevator with someone white, she would smile pleasantly, or she would try not to intimidate people, and she realized white people, and so she realized that she'd been doing this, and that this has just done harm to her soul. She can no longer do this. And I think about how, and I had just written also yesterday about how I've done that, in terms of when I go into a store. I would never take something, a dress, and like make sure it's not very visible,
Yep.
which is so weird. I never really thought about this until a week ago, that there's so many ways that I try to compensate and make white people feel more comfortable and make them think, as she said in her essay, as in her Facebook post, that I'm a good person. I'm not going to steal. And so it was so empowering to read that. And so I think a lot of people are having awakenings, not just people of the white persuasion. A lot of people are awakening. I mean, this kind of blew my mind to see this and realize that she and I were having the same experience at the same time during this week. So healing is happening on so many levels.
And it's okay for us to be ourselves and just relax.
To relax. And I mean, there are some ways that I was aware that things that I've done over the years. I actually wrote an essay about this, and it pertains to the private girls' school that I went to in New York City. But so that's why these memories were coming up for me. And they aren't all memories, because they're ways and things that I've done that make you realize, oh, I'm always aware. I've always been aware that I'm aware that I'm a Black woman living in America. But there are all these things that you have to think about, or at least I was thinking about. I'm thinking the younger generation is not doing that, are trying to compensate. But little ways, little things like, making sure that you have your your whatever shirt that you're going to try on very visible,
Right.
and making sure that you talk to someone as you go into the dressing room, because you want to make sure that they see that,
That,
that you're not trying to steal it. I mean, can you imagine what I might have created if I taken that energy, that little bit, that moment, that exchange, and fueled it into something else and not had to think about that?
wow. Yep. Okay. So now you also wrote horror stories. So on a lighter note, let's switch to horror. Your horror story is called Shades of Love. Did you write horror before?
This is the first piece that I've written that has been, I didn't think of it as being horror so much, but yes, I guess it's horror. Because
Horror.
it's very grounded in racial, would you say?
It says horrific things happened in there, but go ahead.
Horrific things happen. That's true. That's true. And I guess I don't want to spoil it, but it's a horror story that's grounded in the dynamics of a marriage, an interracial relationship, and it deals with having a child and the stresses and pressures of that, and it deals with racism. Yeah. So yes, this was the very first horror thing that I've done, and that too was liberating. It's liberating to kind of just go there. And I didn't even, when I started writing that story, I just started writing. I didn't know where it was going to go. And I know we had some back and forth because you're like, is it really going to end this way? Is that really believable? And I'm like, yes. It's just like, this is where it's going. So that's it. That's it. So yeah, it goes to a very dark place.
What genres do you typically write?
Well, I write usually mostly inspirational pieces that have to do about affirming life and affirming the soul. So they yeah, that's what I tend to write. So maybe that's why this this dark piece was so much fun. You should know that actually when I posted it, that story, and then this fellow spiritual therapist at my spiritual center, which is Agape in LA, she came up to me one Sunday. She goes, I saw that piece that you wrote. I thought to myself, I know this person. So I felt a little uncomfortable, like, okay, should I not be showing that aspect of myself? But hey, that's what came out. So
Writing is writing. So
writing is writing. I didn't actually enact any of the
anything that happened there is all fiction.
It's all fiction.
Did horror change your writing process?
I think it did, because I tend to not necessarily know what I'm going to write, or I might think I'm going to write a story about X or Y, and then it ends up being something completely different. And similarly with the spiritual pieces, I literally just, for lack of a better word, channel, and they just come out. And that's what happened with that horror story, actually, with Shades of Love, which I should point out, the synchronicity of, I wrote that story, titled that story, and when I sent it to you, you said, oh, this is funny. It's very similar to the name of our anthology.
Yeah. She had no idea.
No idea.
That we were naming the anthology Shades of.
Right. And my story was just like Shades of Love. So there you go. So there you go. That just shows you that whatever, we tap into when we write and create, that it's very much there. We're tapping into something. That's my belief.
Yes. What do you think the importance of writing horror is?
I guess it probably depends if it's the writer or the reader, or maybe it's the same. It's really a kind of transformation as well, I think. In that I got to delve deep into this murky, dark, very scary aspect. And then I think when we do that, you bring light to those things. You bring light to that which you're afraid of. Similarly, so writing the story about my mother enabled me to bring light to her death and to her life itself, and bring light to my grief. So I don't think that there's the light in the darkness. I think it's all encompassing. And then if you think about it, everything begins in darkness. Creativity, life itself, the Big Bang, it all began with the darkness. So they go hand in hand.
And darkness isn't necessarily bad, I think. Exactly. It just is, and what we do with it or from it, those actions can be on the scale.
Exactly.
So if you could be any monster, what would you be?
That's such a fun one. The Blob. Because I love that movie as a kid, The Blob. The idea that you have this gelatinous thing that's just absorbing everything. I love that. Just overtaking everything, devouring it that way. I imagine that feels really powerful. Really powerful.
You can overcome anything, like you just moving on.
Right. And then again, the idea of like the light overcoming the darkness too. So it's just absorbing everything. I love that.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't want to end discussing horror, even though that seems to be the lighter topic that we covered.
I know, we're laughing and giggling, right? We talked about, death, our mother's transformation, and we were crying, and now here we are laughing, thinking about horror.
So let me ask you a couple other questions. Has being a part of the anthology changed your writing process?
I think it made me more focused and more committed, actually. And now that I think about it, it also kind of like untapped this level of creativity, because I knew I wanted to, write these pieces, and the feedback that I got was really phenomenal from you and the others who would read the pieces, whether I necessarily agreed with everything, because I kept that ending for the horror story.
And that's totally fine. It works. So.
Yes. So I love that. I got to, for lack of a better word, defend what I'd written and felt like. And so I got to become really clear about, well, this is why I like it this way, or change things. I mean, there are some things I changed, I think. And so yeah, I did. So that feedback was very powerful and empowering. And I trusted, I only knew you, but I trusted whomever else you had gathered to work with you. And it made me want to write more, basically, is what it did.
So would you do this again?
Absolutely. You already have your next volume set in terms of what the title is or the subject matter yet?
Chicago.
Chicago. Oh, that's right. So I have been working on a piece on Chicago because I spent some time there, but thank you for that reminder. I need to go back to it.
That's good, yeah.
Yes, of course. I forgot about that for a moment.
So who are some of your favorite authors and why are they important to you?
It's funny because I was thinking about this, and maybe because she recently, or gosh, how long has it been that she died or made her transition? But Toni Morrison, I think everything begins and ends with Toni Morrison. Yeah, for me, and all of her works. I remember I was talking to my daughter right when we learned that she passed, and we both felt like, gosh, it's kind of strange to imagine that she's not here. Neither one of us have met her or anything, but that's how she was such a big part of our lives in a way, which we weren't conscious of until, we never really talked about her before. I don't think, not her, the figure. Certainly we talked about her writing. So that was just an interesting mirroring of just how pervasive she was and how she's kind of in our DNA. So we both felt her loss. Yeah. She wasn't breathing and walking on the planet, which was interesting. So yeah.
What is on your reading list?
Let's see. I'm really behind. I tend to read, believe it or not, I tend to read a lot of nonfiction as opposed to fiction. So I wanted to think about what pieces of fiction that I want to read. So Tayari Jones's American Marriage. I want to read that just because it was a big book. I actually like to read, when I do read fiction, I like to read like the popular books because I want to know what's in the zeitgeist, what are people tapping into. So there's that book, is it number 1 right now, about where the crawdaddies sing. I want to read that just because I know everyone's been reading it. And this also could go back to my having worked as a journalist at places like People magazine. So I always like to know like what's happening, what's now.
Okay.
Just to be tapped into it. So those are a couple of the books on my reading list, which I haven't had a chance to get to because I'm too busy reading, you know, Washington Post and, you know,
What's happening?
Twitter for current events news and Atlantic, you know, pieces right now. But I should get back to a good novel.
Okay, so as we're wrapping up, where can readers find you if they would like to connect with you more?
Yes, I have a website. It's karenbrailsford.com. So yes, please go to it. That'd be great.
And so that's where readers can find more of your work?
Yes, I've actually posted the pieces from Write Volumes as well, and some inspirational pieces. And then I've been touting a book, my very first book that's coming out this summer. It's an inspirational book. So yes, of course, there's some darkness because we have to move from the darkness into the light. But I'm very excited about this book. It's called Sacred Landscapes of the Soul.
Nice. And I can actually share my screen so people can see it if I remember how to share it. Okay, and there is the info. So you can see the book cover and Karen's email, well, not email, her website info, incoming in summer of 2020. Yay. So thank you so much for your time and thank you for your writing, Karen. We also want to thank everyone for listening. This is Behind the Volume, a look at Write Volumes in the making. Please check out our website, writevolumes.com, for our latest info, and you can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. And remember, together we can write volumes.
Thank you for having me.
And